Video games as an entertainment media have come a long way over the years, promising all different kinds of play and a near infinite variety of experiences. So many different kinds of games exist, ranging from platformers, puzzle games, shooting games, MMORPGs, RTSs, the list can go on and on. However, unlike many other forms of media, games are unique in that almost all games are expected to be interacted with, and sometimes can't even exist without a player to play them. When you look at games at a fundamental level and try to piece together how they are designed, and particularly how they facilitate player input and output, one of the most important lenses that you can use to judge a game's effectiveness in this sense is the lens of feedback, as described in The Art of Game Design by author Jesse Schell. This lens is meant to focus on how the game responds to player interaction. Is the player receiving feedback that matches what they expect? Are they being given all the necessary info they need at any given moment? Is there anything that's being hidden? These are the kinds of questions that need to be asked when attempting to view a game's design through this lens. One grouping of games that benefits greatly from good and effective feedback is the games of skill category. Any game that is focused more on individual player skill as a means of success, as opposed to say luck or other input that doesn't require skill, could fall into this category. Board games like chess or checkers, racing games like Forza or Gran Turismo, fighting games like Tekken or Street Fighter, and even rhythm games like Friday Night Funkin' or Guitar Hero could all fall into this loose category of games. One particular game of skill that I want to apply the lens of feedback to in this video has been a favorite of mine since its release. It's a game that makes effective use of its deceptive simplicity coupled with well-designed mechanics to challenge a player and evoke a sense of pride and accomplishment. This game in question is Furi. The Steam page for Furi describes the game as an ultra-responsive, fast-paced sword-fighting and dual-stick shooting game. My personal description of the game to my friends has always been, well, do you like boss fights? Because this game is only boss fights. But underneath this simple, hand-wavy description is a love for a game that puts forward a fantastic soundtrack, cool art direction, and well-designed and challenging fights. In this game, you play as the Stranger, a seemingly amnesiac man who happens to be incredibly talented with a gun and sword. Imprisoned and tortured for as long as you know, you are given a chance to escape by a fellow inmate. However, to truly escape this monolithic cyber prison you find yourself in, you must defeat the many jailers standing in your way, and this serves as the main premise for each and every boss fight thrown your way.
I swear I'll put you right back in your cell.
The boss fights themselves have a variety of mechanics, from bullet hell dodge heavy segments to close-up reaction-based swordplay. Either way, your main goal throughout any fight is to burn out the boss's many health bars while also preserving as much of your lives as possible. Beyond simple 2D movement, your character has 4 main actions that they can take at any point in time. You could attack with your sword or shoot your gun to deal some damage, depending on range, or you could take a defensive option by dashing or parrying. All of these actions can be repeated for some desired effect, and with the exception of the parry, can also be charged for higher effectiveness. Besides some extra nuances, some of which will be covered later on, this is basically all you need to know about the character's controls of Furi, with the game lending itself to a very quick learning curve in this aspect. The real challenge in Furi comes from learning when the best times are for using these actions, and how to apply them to the individual bosses, all of whom have wildly different attack patterns and quirks that must be adjusted to. Here we can begin to take a look at the game through the lens of feedback to figure out how the game subtly teaches you everything from proper timing to option optimization throughout each boss fight. Anytime you swing your sword or shoot your gun, you expect one of 2 things to happen. Either you do damage or you don't. Plain and simple. The way Furi communicates this to you is one of the simplest ways in which it provides effective feedback. Whenever you land a hit, several things will happen. On a successful hit, along with the boss's HP decreasing, you'll notice a boss will glow red, orange sparks or light effects will radiate off them, and a hit sound effect such as or will occur. Additionally, the screen will shake, giving the hit some punch, making the player feel like they're impacting the boss more than just decreasing a number on the screen. All of these signifiers are ways that the game tells you that your attack was successful, part minute reward and part utilitarian conveyance. Conversely, there are a number of signifiers for when your hits fail, and they can vary depending on the different states of the boss. Sometimes the boss will enter an invincible state.
There is no way you can defeat me.
Whether a design decision to prevent the player from damaging the boss during a large attack, or as a normal get-up animation. In this state, any attacks the player attempts on the boss will have no effect. To communicate this to the player, the boss will glow a bright metallic orange. Any attacks that land while the boss is orange will produce a sort of bubble shield bluish effect. Sword slashes will produce a sound evoking metal being deflected by metal, and gunshots will produce a similar, albeit lighter sound effect upon impact. These effects combined evoke the sense of impenetrable metal, as if the boss had sheathed themselves into metal for a moment to shield themselves from attack. Another way hits can fail is if the boss blocks or reflects them, instead of directly nullifying them. For example, a boss called the Hand starts the fight with a large shield. Anytime he brings up the shield, it glows bright green, and any projectiles that hit it are automatically reflected back. The reflection itself has signifiers that are consistent throughout all the bosses in the game, including the player character himself, a bluish ripple effect coupled with an audible metallic ding. Additionally, though it can be hard to catch sometimes in the heat of the fight, the boss will flash blue, indicating a successful reflection or block. Finally, throughout a fight, your attacks may not be blocked or reflected, but instead parried. In Furi, parries can make way for an opportunity to execute a revenge attack, as the opponent will become locked and stunned for a few moments. To indicate that a boss has parried one of your attacks, the game will show the same effects from the block or reflection, but the more obvious effect that you, as the player, may want to react to is a very loud and distinct. The reasoning behind the implementation of this sound effect is straightforward. The sound is loud and alarming enough to instill a sense of panic or urgency within the player, as failing to react to the parry can result in some heavy incoming damage. Interestingly, one of the main defensive options that the player has at their disposal is a nearly identical parry. In a similar fashion, anytime the boss moves to strike you, indicated by a white flash and an audible sound, you can attempt to time a parry and, if successful, nullify the incoming damage and potentially create an opening for a counterattack. The only difference here is that some attacks, when parried by the player, allows them to regenerate a little bit of health. When this happens, you will hear a signifying success along with a variety of neon green visual effects. This differentiates a normal parry from one that would heal you. Conveniently, all of this information is conveyed to the player during the first boss fight, which doubles both as a tutorial and a testing ground for the player. Specifically, the game has you test out all 4 of your main actions, and you are given a chance to see how the boss reacts to them. But why am I talking about simple colorful sparks and sound effects? Well, in a fast-paced, skill-based game like Furi, often design elements as simple as this are the most paramount to ensure a game that is fair, responsive, and satisfying to play. This means designing feedback that is both nuanced in context and utilitarian in function. Well-telegraphed boss attacks feel fair, and even if you are hit by them, you are always aware of it instantly and are able to react to them. Projectiles like these invincible orbs that must be dodged are clear, and in this instance audibly distinct, such that you can quickly factor them in. Super attack phases, where the boss turns invincible and throws a variety of attacks at you, are easy to identify by the metallic orange and vulnerable state, signaling the player to focus on surviving instead of trying and failing to deal damage. It is things like this that expedite the learning process of a player and allow them to devote much of their time to planning out and practicing their execution, which is something that some skill-based games struggle with. On the flip side, as a game creator or designer, you might want to design feedback that does its best to immerse the player in the game world itself and make the mechanics satisfying to fulfill. In Furi, hits and blocks evoke sounds of metal on metal in the case of sword use, fleshy or leathery impacts when the stranger kicks or punches, and many of the projectiles emit sounds relating to lasers of plasma whenever they are impacted or parried. Additionally, the screen shakes and the controller vibrates to impart a sense of physical feedback, enforcing the sense of power in the player. Even the boss attack indicators, which might not be reflective of the context nor reality, can still give a player a sense of rhythm or cadence when coupled with the sounds of successful parrying or dodging. All of this to say that Furi does a pretty good job of making its mechanics and the nuances around them accessible and easy to identify, without sacrificing the game feel or immersion in the game. It sets a solid baseline, which serves as the foundation for its unique and well-designed boss fights, paving the way for a real and toothy challenge for any player daring to attempt it. Truly, the game has been built from the ground up as a test of skill, even offering a speedrun category for those who have solved its boss encounters. I encourage anyone who hasn't tried Furi and wants something akin to a boss fight simulator to pick it up. Just don't expect to escape so easily. And I encourage any potential game designer out there to keep in mind that effective feedback for the player, no matter how big or small, utilitarian or contextual, is crucial for the player to truly enjoy your game.